But instead of being terrified, we've got to learn to let go of the things that may not have mattered so much when we thought they did, and get ready for tremendous new opportunity to build things the way that they should be built, to allow us to live in a society that will benefit us in a new way.
I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and we're here with Marcia Schafer, and she's going to be telling us a little bit more about the future possibly. She's written a wonderful book, and she can talk about that and tell us what's been going on for the past year.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. What's been really intriguing in the past year is to see the progression of where people were and where they have come to in such a short time. What I do as a business consultant is that I work with people around the world, probably in 14 countries at this point, and I give them both hard business skills to get ahead, but also some spiritual, mystical, and esoteric knowledge so that they can reposition themselves to really be a new leader for the tomorrow that we need to have. So I'm basically planting human seeds by giving them the skills they need to walk in dual worlds, to build a different type of future than the one that seems to be being handed off to us. And it's been amazing to see the scope of the people who are intrigued by this and want more, because it's not just the New Age realm and esoteric people. There is an entire subgroup of people waking up, making the people who are already aware of these types of things, their demographic group thus is becoming enhanced, because it's like you have that middle swing vote. Well, the middle swing vote is making a difference and making a decision, and they're delving very heavily into wanting to know all about this greater reality, this great unknown that's out there. What does it mean? So how many people at this point have had an esoteric experience like, I think I saw a ghost, or I saw something in the sky, and they want to know more about it. They want to know more about life's great questions as to why we're here, what does my life mean and have meaning. So we delve into the soul aspects, but then we go into stage 2 and reposition them. So, okay, so you have all this information. Now what are you going to do about it to make a difference? Because that's why we are all here today at this time, is to make a difference, to help to turn a strategic corner on this planet. And they really embrace that and are taking it very seriously. And they're moving so fast in terms of their knowledge and awareness that some of these people are just blowing my mind. You know, between a week of, I'm curious, and then they call back the next week and they have a subsequent appointment, and I've been out of my body. I've had this experience. I think there was an extraterrestrial here or something.
Really?
And they need answers. So where do you go for answers? I mean, it's not like you can really go to Wikipedia all the time to find it, or, you know, call a friend or something. So.
Well, I could recommend they go to Camelot for one thing.
Excellent. Yes, we will do that.
But that's great. Well, so you're working with executives at companies, is this right?
I'm working with executives at companies. I'm working with just lay people, housewives. I've got clients that range from 16 to 92 and everything in between.
Well, how did they find out about you?
You know, I just find it amazing. They just find me. I have never advertised or marketed, and you'll often hear me say that Google and God are my marketing directors. They just find me. It's like when the London Sunday Times found me, and I go, how on earth did you ever find me?
That's right.
And they said, found you on the internet. You know, I just did a search.
So would you call yourself like a personal coach?
No, absolutely not. The reason why is that my executive background and my academic credentials are pretty substantial.
Right.
And so, you know, it may be the ego, but I worked hard for them, and I like to take credit for them. So I have a tremendous amount of knowledge. I'm not just coaching people.
Right.
I'm giving them hands-on experience that you only get when you've really been in certain positions at the top of an organization.
Okay.
And, you know, I've had the professional training, but I mean, my God, I have an MBA, but I think so does George Bush. So, I mean, anybody can get an MBA.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
One begins
Can we
to
edit
wonder.
that out? But, you know, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of knowledge I have hands-on that really save them a lot of time and money in terms of when they're really trying to get repositioned as to what am I going to do here with this business? Real information, not just motivational coaching. Not denigrating motivational coaching, because there is part of that in there.
Right.
Of keeping people focused, and it's an important part. But really tangible, technical skills and inside knowledge that you don't get unless you've been inside an industry. And I've worked across a span of industries that I can help them get positioned. But really, they're mostly hungry for, they like that, but the esoteric is...
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. So, but in terms of hands-on, in a sense, I mean, you're a contactee.
Yes.
You know, you're also, I don't know how you want to term it, but you're intuitive, psychic.
Yeah.
So you must give them entree into certain worlds that maybe they're already being in touch with. I mean,
Right.
are the people coming to you people that have a background already in, you know, having anomalous experiences in their life, possibly even abduction experiences, whatever, contact experiences, however you want to call it? Or are they people that are just, you know, the blank slate coming to you saying, I know nothing, you know, enlighten me?
Yes and yes. It's amazing.
Really?
I tend to say that I work with the reincarnated initiates primarily, the people who are really
Oh,
here
all
to be
right.
the teachers. But at the same time, I'd say 20-25% of the people who come to me are just awakening and dipping their feet in. However, what they soon discover is they've had a lot of teaching in other lifetimes. And so we kind of rip the veil away so that they can access that information and be catapulted pretty far ahead of the game by
Okay.
getting into those other trainings they've
So
had in other lifetimes.
but are you able to tap into their reincarnation history to some
Instantly.
degree? Oh,
Instantly.
really?
Yeah, I can either look at a picture by proxy. That's how I work with people around the world. The way I found out was quite by accident. Is a woman once handed me a picture of her daughter at lunch, and I said, "Did you know there's a man standing next to her that you can't see?" And I described him, and I said he was in the shoe industry. And she said, "Oh my God, that's my father. He's been dead for 2 years."
Ah.
And so I also can see your soul path and your reincarnational journeys. So I just use the photos for people and animals and tap right into them.
Okay, so the same thing that you have access to with animals, you're tapping into with humans.
Yeah, it's a lot faster. I have to work a lot harder with the animals than I do with the humans.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
so that gives me information. So then your life work becomes your work life, which is very self-fulfilling, rather than just going and thinking, okay, I'm going to go on an interview and work for somebody else, or I want to be an entrepreneur. But people are afraid, and that's the biggest thing that people have to overcome is their fear, whether the fear of the unknown, fear of going forward and being an entrepreneur, fear of, was that an alien that I saw? If you have information, then there goes the fear. It's just not knowing what to expect that strips people of their ability to stand in full power.
Well, so in a certain sense, you're assisting people to find their mission and
Yes.
then possibly to execute it to some degree.
I think that's very well put. And it's really intriguing to watch them around the world as they're starting to really take a look at the future and say, this can happen. I can do things differently. And the future is going to be very different than what I am being given with the CNN version of reality that we get fed every day.
Right.
If I step out of this scenario that I am being fed and take back life as I
Right.
want to live it.
And see beneath the surface to what's really going on outside
Absolutely.
of the matrix.
Absolutely. The extraterrestrial component, though, is such an integral part of that, and they all want to know more because it's really brings back our full history on this planet, and it brings back our potential future as we go out into space and enter into the next frontier. So that's a large component also of what people are getting involved in. And having had a scope of experiences with not just one race, but multiple races, giving me a multicultural variation to it, different aspects of technology, holography, communication, different species attributes, how they tend to work with humans, who tends to take you on a little bit of a joy journey, who tends to give you more philosophical teachings. Those types of things are really helpful as people are trying to gain their own working ground and wrapping their head around the extraterrestrial reality.
Well, also we're all mixtures of different races, wouldn't you say? So, you must tap into that.
More ways than you would think. More
Yes.
ways than even the human race.
Well, that's what I meant by
Yeah.
races. Other, ET races, various ETs. So you must actually tap into their sort of lineage, if you will.
Oftentimes I can. Oftentimes. If you take reincarnation in general, for example, someone may have 140 lifetimes, but only 4 are really germane to what's going on right now. And
That's
with their journeys of where they may have reincarnated not on Earth, There's often, not always, but there's often a primary lineage that they really feel affinity to. Just like here on Earth, we could say, well, I really am more in tune with my Egyptian incarnations than I am with my Greek ones. Same thing with somebody may have. And, you know, a lot of times there's no names for these races that we have. I can just describe where they seem to be coming from, or if there's something in the common vernacular, but they have something very strong there. But people are always positioned that they've got to find their own answers, because this isn't empirical information.
Right.
And so I can't give you in 1613, you know, there was this particular information, you can go look it up, or in, you know, 42 AD. So people have to be tuned into their own reality and their own version of what feels right and what feels resonant
what resonates with
them.
them.
So these are just like tools and things to help. Here is, you know, just a cornucopia of information. If it feels right, take it and use it as a tool to grow. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Just discard it, because you have to be your own master of your destiny. And don't you dare hand off the keys to the car to me or anybody else.
Right. Yeah. That's, well, great to hear that that's your approach. So in your own back experience with the races that you feel affinity for, are you willing to talk about which races you do? Because, you know, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there's something with the Syrians and Andromedans that you had some contact there. I know you have a real affinity for Egypt, and I feel I know you're from Egypt, I have to say.
Yeah, a lot of times when I do use those terms, as I pointed out, they're used because they're already in the common vernacular and people are familiar with them. My perspective is I'll talk a little bit about the extraterrestrial races, but there's something that's beyond them that I think is so much more important that I get people focused in on, and that's what I call the multidimensional teachers, the more advanced beings who really teach us to become elevated, superhumans almost, to be what we aspire to be and know that what we can be, you know, the best of humanity. Those are the ones I like to focus in on and stay in communion with. You really almost have to earn your privileges with them. It's as if, you know, as an average person, we would try to get into Harvard, where supposedly they have wonderful teachers there, though they're also good teachers elsewhere. But, you know, it's that type of thing is I really feel honored when I have the ability to get communion and communication with them. And that's where I try to focus people.
Okay.
Because,
so are you, when you say multidimensional, are you talking light beings? People that
you could call them that.
That
they don't need a body.
Manifest in
They will
certain...
use one oftentimes, but they don't necessarily need a body, and so they're what we tend to refer to as the old wise masters, and they can take any form, any shape. They really focus a lot on teaching the understanding of space, time, which is so infantile here on this planet, getting us to understand multiple perspectives, how things really work out there and how to navigate beyond the human experience. There's a lot to do with when you get into the very controversial aspects of time and time travel. They teach you the truth. Now, truth, really, what is truth? Truth is a matter of perspective. What is truth at one point and to one person is not another person's. But I feel it's the closest to the truth that I've been able to get at this point. But the regular extraterrestrial races are the ones that a lot of people are having contacts with. You always hear about the Greys. And what I like to get people familiar with is the fact that with the Greys is that they have some of the most tremendous powers of holography, telepathy of all the races out there. And their power of being able to get inside your head and anticipate what they need to do for a scenario to be able to reach out to you or to get you to think that you're in a certain situation so that you're more comfortable is quite powerful. And so you want to break through that illusion. But I also try to get people to understand that stop looking at things from a human who's very stubborn and try to understand why these races are working with us in the capacity that they are. And so what the human does is they take themselves out of the placement of I'm just another species and tries to put themselves as a godlike being. And we're not a godlike being. We are just another species in the broad spectrum that's out there. And so when we look
there is also a tendency to put the alien or the ET in that position.
Very much so, because they're so
and that's
different.
a huge
Part of
gap and a disconnect.
Yeah, and that's part of our growing up, and that what we have to do is to stop looking at them as gods. That's one of the most common 10 myths of extraterrestrial reality, that they're gods and great beings.
Right.
They're not gods and great beings. We should think of them as life colleagues, and that's how we should think of every species on this planet.
Also, they all have agendas. We've got a basis for what you're doing with your contacts, and also with the people that you're consulting. Call yourself a consultant, right?
Yeah.
And so what we want to know is, have you had contact lately, and what are they telling you, if anything, about what's going on here today? Because we've got an economy
Excellent
that's
question.
in the tank, right?
Yeah.
And we've got, people are wondering what's happening with their stocks. The stock market is down, drastically down. We've got potential war with Iran. We've got all kinds of things going on.
We're at an incredibly tumultuous situation, and I want to give you kudos because you're the first person who's asked me that, and you really have to ask me questions to get a lot of information out of me.
Sure.
What has happened is, as you know from the last time, I've been contacted since I was in the crib. But what they did is they made some, what we could call in an analogy as saying I'm hardwired, tapped in. And so I have instant communication anytime I need it to the other side. So I don't have to necessarily have an extraterrestrial visitor, have them come. I haven't seen anyone in the physical for a while. Over the past couple of years, there's been a couple of attempts, and I've closed the door for certain reasons because I wasn't sure who it was in advance. And so that is something that I've done in the recent years, unless I know exactly who it is and I feel completely comfortable. It's kind of a Pavlovian response. But I always have access to information anytime I ask a question. It's almost like there was a little antenna on all the time. And what you're asking is what I'm getting people all over the world. I mean, people are really, really scared, confused, not sure what's happening.
Right.
But what I want to point out is, are we in the midst of great change? Absolutely. But you've got to get rid of the baby teeth before the big teeth can come in. And so what I'm doing is getting people to look at it from a different perspective. I mean, we've been through all kinds of tumultuous situations ever since the history of mankind. I mean, Sparta invaded Athens. The Romans took over England. We can go right on up throughout history where we felt like the world was ending and there was total chaos within the context of our civilization in which we lived. Right. We're in the midst of one of those times. But instead of being terrified, we've got to learn to let go of the things that may not have mattered so much when we thought they did, and get ready for tremendous new opportunity to build things the way that they should be built, to allow us to live in a society that will benefit us in a new way. Now, a lot of people aren't going to like that because they like their house, they've accrued a tremendous amount of money, they like the lifestyle they have, but the bottom line is the planet can't sustain that anymore.
Okay, but so you know that the Illuminati have an agenda. They're trying to roll that out as we speak. You know that there's efforts to actually attack Iran. So this is going on in the backdrop, and yet you seem to be very optimistic. So when you say, look, they're going to lose their money, they may lose their house, certainly the housing crisis is pretty phenomenal. But what is the new style that you're sort of telling them going towards?
And I just want to clarify is that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to lose their money, but you have to be living at a time right now where we have to be able to surf the waves and deal with what comes forward. What I'm doing is repositioning them in terms of looking at, there's never been a better time. Oh, this is a horrible analogy. Think about if the carpetbaggers in the South were a positive thing instead of abusing the South the way it happened. Think if it was a positive humanitarian thing. There's never been a better time to get in on the ground floor right now to get positioned for a different future, one that's going to include our going beyond the frontiers of this planet, the new frontiers of space, the tremendous advances in technology and artificial intelligence, the tremendous changes in people's lifestyles, the tremendous understandings of the greater reality, which is going to be flooding in to a new degree. There's never been a better chance to be a true pioneer and be tremendously successful. And the message I get over and over again, whether it's somebody who's just raising, I shouldn't say just, the most important job of our generation is raising kids, but somebody who's raising kids, dealing with a family, is a small-time entrepreneur or a major CEO who's in ultimate despair, as they get off the phone with me, they say, I've never looked at life so differently, and I have such a different vision of the future and of hope that it's incredible. And so what I'm doing is telling them and showing them that it's all about vision and how we look at it, and you just got to be prepared. Now, if some things are going to happen, they're going to happen. Some things may not happen. Some things you may make a difference in by doing things differently, thinking differently, creating this resistance to this, as I call it, and you heard me say before, CNN version of reality.
Right.
And it's all about, everything I've talked about is all about taking back our power as human beings, as social beings, as cultural beings, as someone incarnated within the times, where we now have tools that we didn't have before.
Okay, we've got an oil-dependent regime, okay?
Which we've had for a very long time.
And exactly. And so what we're looking for is something that will change, a mind that's open to change. Okay, that's going to be the bottom line of it, is that if they're not willing to change the paradigm, then we're going to get the same old, right?
Well, you're making an assumption.
Help me here, because if we're still dependent on oil.
So if we don't change the paradigm, there's several things that could happen. There could be things that happen geologically, geographically. There could be things that could happen where those who watch over us may decide to step in or may not.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of things that could happen. The optimum opportunity for us is to change the paradigm. Now, the intriguing thing is I sometimes get asked, well, do they tell you who's going to win the election? You know, do they give you advance notice? Whenever I get information, it's usually just days before the wire, because it's already written out there and they let me know, which has happened in the past elections. However, in this situation, what they do is they really watch, because this tells them the pulse of the human being within the United States as to how they make their decisions, what their trends are, where they seem to be putting their energies and information in terms of where they're going forward. Because, as you're pointing out, one pathway does lead towards openness to greater change and doing things differently, and the other one does show more resistance. Now, this is highly controversial, but with the last series of elections that we had, we don't know if this is true or not, but the information I had been given in the 1990s was that they were intending for the early 2000s, particularly between 2002 and 2004, to be able to make great headway in terms of making themselves known on this planet. But with things that took place and the way they watched the populace respond to certain things that happened, it was decided that they were not going to shake up the planet and they were going to wait at that time.
Okay, so here we are, 2008 is what you're getting, that they are going to come forward more.
I do believe it's absolutely going to happen in our lifetime. Whether I've got a date, I know a lot of people believe that by 2012 it's going to happen. I can only tell you potentials. I would expect at the rate we are going by 2016 it should be out in the open. Could it happen in 2 years? Sure. Could it happen in 12 years? Sure. But at this point in time, I do not know, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. I'm just looking at potentials and the way that we're going forward. Anything's up for grabs, but you know, as I alluded to last time, you also look for indicators as to what's out there where it might happen. We are getting more into the open populace and more into the mainstream. But remember, I also said that one of the major triggers for knowing when it's coming soon is when there's an announcement that on another planet they found evidence of an ancient civilization. If we ever find that, then we know it's just around the corner. That may not be our pathway. They may not go that way with us, but I would expect, since it's a general trend, that they usually do with planets opening up.
Okay, but what you're dealing with are executives, as you say, there's a growing consciousness change.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and you seem pretty impressed by it.
Oh, I'm astonished. I'm not impressed. In the past year and the difference in my practice, astonished.
Okay, well that's lovely.
The level of people, what they're experiencing, and once they're beginning to get some answers to put some pieces to the puzzle together, how fast they're being accelerated. And I just basically let go and let them work with those on the other side who work with them. And they are flying.
Okay.
I mean, these people are almost like colleagues to me at this point instead of, you know, just coming as initiates.
That's nice.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a great feeling. But you know, they're ETs with what might be called a negative agenda or not in our best interest. And do you make your clients aware of who those ETs are? Do you teach them how to protect themselves?
The number one thing is teach them how to protect themselves, not just from ETs, but when you start opening up the door to the other side, anything and everything can come in.
Right.
So you don't open up the door till you know how to shut it. So that's the number one thing. However, I don't teach them necessarily this one is negative or that one is negative, because think of it when you were a kid, you know, and you had this best friend and your parents couldn't stand them because in their eyes they were negative, but you saw value in that person. There may be something there for them that I could be putting within this paradigm, which would be, you know, unfair.
Okay.
So what I do is I give them tools of discernment, of protection, of what to look for. The most powerful tool I give them is how to use their cognitive mind along with their intuitive mind to look at things perceptively and to look at this greater reality that's out there and whoever may be in it and be able to, let's say, vet them so that they can determine for themselves.
Right, whether they're sending them on a positive mission, if you will.
Right,
You know, because a lot of these things go on. You know, Jim Sparks is one of the well-known conscious abductees, if you will. He, you know, his recall could have and probably does have some overlays to it, even though it appears to be positive. So this is, you know, a huge dilemma.
Well, Jim and I had an interesting phone call within the past year, I think it was. And before I tell you what, I'll say one thing interesting, that those of us who've had experiences that aren't just, you know, oh, I had an experience or I saw something, but of lifetime training, there are things we know about that only each other know. So we can, again, using the word vet each other very quickly. And so Jim and I realized that we could talk a similar language and very comfortably, very quickly. And the thing with Jim is that, from what I understand, and I may have this wrong, but I understand is that he originally looked at this negatively, but then he soon learned by widening his perspective that there was a greater agenda, more going on than he realized was going on, and he was able to look at it differently.
Right.
And so that's one of the approaches that's really incumbent upon all of us to be aware of, is that we don't always understand what's going on when we work with these other groups, and that's why you have to think perceptively in a whole new manner and be open, but at the same time be smart and not give away, you know, the keys to the vault of yourself and say, again, oh, they're gods, I'll do anything you say.
Right.
You need to think smartly and say, is this right for me? What kind of information am I getting? How does this integrate into my reality? Does it make sense? What am I going to do with it? Is somebody taking me for a joyride here or what? And so these are the things that people worldwide need to know. This needs to be part of our ET 101 education that we've been stripped of by not even being allowed to acknowledge that they exist.
Exactly.
So I'm doing my best to get ET 101 and 401 out there into the common populace for those who are open for it.
Okay, but so you're getting information yourself. You're dealing with people that are starting to open up, some of which are quite far along on the path. And then at the same time, we've got this, I don't know if you want to call it a rolling snowball, but whatever this is, you know, stuff is coming down the pike, some of which will be earth changes.
You say that very definitively, my friend.
Right. Well, earth changes, you know, again.
We've had earth changes since we've been on this planet.
Right, so don't misinterpret what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm using the term earth changes purposefully. It could be small, you know, it could be a tornado. It could be, you know, it could be a major change in a coastline. It could be a change in the amount of water, you know, inundated certain areas, you know, ecosystems changing. It could be small or it could be major. Right? So we have a gamut.
Right.
And what we're wondering, and what I'm sure people out there are wondering, is to what degree and how soon and where and this kind of thing. And what I'm wondering is, are you getting that kind of information, or is it all still, you know, subject to change?
No, I am getting some of that information. It is heavily dependent on where the consciousness of the planet goes. And so that's why it is so important to get people empowered and get them to understand that they have an entrainment program in front of them in terms of where their minds are, where their thoughts are, what they're expecting, and how they're acting. There's going to make a difference in what's going to befall them. It is absolutely critical because of the way that I've been led to understand that time works is that this is going to impact which timeline befalls us as a greater populace.
Right.
As far as details, I'm occasionally shown some things, but they always have predicated it with this is a probable tendency, a probable reality. Anything can change.
Okay.
One interesting thing that I understand Edgar Casey had said is that within the past month or two, I have seen some land rising off of Florida. Now, whether that's going to happen, I don't know any more than you do. But I would be very intrigued. You know, that whole Bimini type of line down to the Bahamas has been shown to me as becoming more solidified as a potential. So, but again, I don't know. I mean, I don't know any more than I know which horse is going to run at Belmont, you know, and win.
Right.
But I just listen to it. I pay attention to it. Know that it's a potential. It's a possibility. And we'll wait and see, just like the rest of us.
Okay. So, in addition, we get, you know, because Camelot's now been in operation for a little over 2 years. We've got, you know, witnesses from deep black projects. We've got psychics. We've got intuitives. We've got, you know, covering the gamut, really. And the information we get coming at us is really amazing. There's a huge amount of it, which is kind of focused on what appears to be, if you're familiar with the Iron Mountain Report, and with some of the agendas that they're trying to roll out. Now, whether they'll be, you know, successful at that, of course, has something to do with the way the populace reacts and,
Okay,
and the consciousness.
So, what is the Iron Mountain Report?
Reduction of the population through disease, you know, actually planted, you know, viruses, war, you know, creating what they call chaos to bring order out of that, the kind of order that they're looking for. In other words, there is a movement to get rid of a certain degree of population. There are agendas out there that they're pushing along. And what I'm wondering is, in your work, because these agendas, in other words, you can consult somebody individually on their life and they can start having a much better view of reality and of all their potential, and, you know, want to start a company, let's say. In fact, we just met a couple who they're starting a very wonderful, eco-friendly way of building houses, okay? Kind to the environment, you name it. But they're in a dilemma right now. They've got a child, and they feel that something's coming down the pike. They actually live already in a fairly, what I would consider to be, you know, who can call that anything safe, but safe in the sense that it's not on a coastline, you're not going to have a tsunami tomorrow, this sort of thing. But they feel that America has become actually, you know, untenable. It's not going to be the America we knew in the past.
It already isn't the America
exactly.
we knew in the past.
So this is worrying them, and they want to know what their future looks like for their child, and they're actually contemplating moving out of the country to South America, because now.
No, I'm getting a lot of South America. I have a lot of clients throughout.
Yeah, great.
South America,
well, let's hear what it is.
Okay, so
what would you say to these people is what I'm asking.
I do say what I'm about to say because I get asked this every single time, is that you are going to be guided to wherever you need to go. When, if something is going to happen, you're going to end up exactly where you need to go. And it may not be, you know, heading high for the hills and hanging out and being safe with your family, because if something were to happen on a larger degree in this country, worldwide, people have certain skill sets that are going to be needed in certain places. So this is where I get people to tap into their higher selves and their consciousness and say, just trust in yourself, because you weren't born to pay the mortgage. You weren't born to go to your kid's soccer game. Those are things that come with everyday life. You were born as part of a mass contingency who decided to be here at a time to help enable a strategic turnaround on this planet. So for God's sakes, listen to yourself, remember who you are and why you are here, and stop worrying about these things, because you'll be wherever you need to be, and you'll have whatever you need to do at that time. Now, in terms of the population being reduced, whatever, we've been through that. You look at what Western Europe being wiped out by the Black Plague. And so, you know, as many people have said before, is how can we know our future when we don't even remember our past? And so we've been through many periods of times that have had happened to them exactly what's happening now. The difference now is we have advanced technology to understand it differently. We have mass communications to know what's happening immediately. Some people didn't know about Krakatoa, which was, for some, the end of the world, for years afterwards. So what is happening now isn't all that different than what's happened throughout history. The difference is that we have a Mayan prophecy that is scaring the pants off of people. We have the world where we're able to see it in a way we have not been able to see it before. We have environmental tragedy happening every day with species disappearing and mass pieces of land just melting away. We have a lot of things happening that we know about. And so the environment is pushing us in a vast direction very quickly. And we're all able to know about this through this grand internet and telecommunications.
That's right.
And through our Blackberries and whatever else we're using in our iPhones. So we have almost like everything that we've been through in different cycles of time before coming into the greatest culmination right now. The other thing we have, and this is very controversial, I can't believe I'm going to talk about it on camera, is that when we talk about reincarnation, what I have seen is we have a mass contingency reincarnated again. And those who were at first working at the time that we know of at Naughton, but what I call the Jesus contingency, there was the time at that point of what we've been led to believe was a little bit different than the religious accounts tend to tell us. I mean, we have to remember the stories were written 70 years later at the earliest. We have very small fragments of what happened. But there was a mass contingency of people back at that time. They're all reincarnated and back here again, once again, trying to do this amazing strategic turnaround on this planet, hoping for a different future. But goodness, look what happened 2,000 years ago. It wasn't the way that a lot of people thought it was going to turn out, and I don't think certainly Yeshua thought it was going to turn out that way, or maybe the plans are a little different. That's very bold for me to say, but I've seen this amazing contingency reincarnated again, back here. So if we're facing a strategic turnaround, I think we have a well-equipped group to deal with it if they just do one thing. They remember who they are, come into their power, take back the way that they think and not give away that power to others, remember the spiritual component within them, remember the divinity in everybody else that's out there, and it's not just within them. If this demographic group learns to link together the way that they're starting to and work together, they're a bigger group than anybody ever would believe. And they absolutely can do everything that's being asked of them and turn it around. But it's up to them. It's like I can say, I can give you an admission to a wonderful college, but you may not go. You may take a different pathway. That's basically what we have in front of us. So our group incarnational lesson right now is to find each other, collaborate, work together, get rid of the pettiness that has plagued mankind, and start doing things on small platforms, on big platforms, not waiting for permission from anybody, just going forward and going. Because as a lot of your audience really tends to tap into, the clock does seem to be ticking at 5 minutes to midnight. And you know what? Even if we have another 17 hours on that clock, what we need to do will be beneficial. So whether we have 5 minutes to midnight or we have a long time in front of us, doesn't matter. We need to get going and we need to act. And that's why I've been so busy and I haven't been able to be out and talking to people and doing what needs to be done. It's because I am prepping these human seeds everywhere so they go out and cascade and reach a lot of people.
We interviewed George Green. April, we interviewed George Green, who is a contactee as well as you know. And his sources tell him that it's nearly too late. He refers to the group of people who are aware and alert and awakened as the Groundcrew. It's just his typology for that. And he wrote a little booklet called Messages for the Groundcrew. And this is one of the things that inspired us to launch Project Avalon, which is focused on communities, awakening, resources, communication, networking, sharing information. Are you just saying, actually, it's okay, it'll be fine because whatever happens is going to work out?
No, I'm saying it's a call to action right now.
So what is the action? If I'm watching this video, and I'm smart and I'm aware and I'm alert and I'm focused and I'm flexible. Now what do? Where do I go? What should my strategy be? What advice do you give me personally about this? Because I want something more specific, because I'm very I mean, this isn't me personally speaking, but what I often do in these interviews is I ask questions that we're asked to ask. We get these messages every day. People say, what do I do? How can I help? How can I contribute? I've got a feeling of responsibility to the human race. Tell me what this call to action should be. Help me be focused.
On a one-to-one basis, what I do basically is that I look at what your reincarnational lessons have been, but then I also take a look at what have you done in terms of your skill set, and where is your knowledge, and where's your expertise that we can really position you, that you are really going to make a difference. But add to the mix of that, what do you want to do? And usually you can take the three things in terms of your life and soul purpose and lessons, your experience that you've garnered along the pathway, and what you want to do, and come up with some way to position you so that you're a new world, a new paradigm entrepreneur. So it's different for every single person. You know, just like we have doctors and we have pharmacists and we have bicycle makers and we have grocery store people and we have farmers. But at the same time, you don't look at it the way you've been doing it. You look at it as, how's the world changing? How's this 21st century vision different in terms of how the food delivery system is going to be? Are we going to be working in off of planet? Are we going to be working on planet? What kind of scarcities are there going to be? So you need to look at an entire array of situations to see where you have the best opportunity to be positioned. A lot of times people have an inkling and they really know. That's when they need the hard business sense in terms of, okay, how do I make this happen for real? In terms of, you know, I need to know certain ways to get my talents out there or my products out there or my services out there and get them to the people who need them. Now this goes back to, again, in terms of there's this entire new demographic that is out there, which is, I'm going to just boldly say, us. We have different appetites. It's like all of a sudden, you know, everyone's eating meat and you want sushi. We have different appetites in terms of what we want the world to see. So this is where we're now feeding our own demographic group and creating this world that's burgeoning out. Mm-hmm. So we say you want hard answers, so does everybody else, but it's a little bit different for each person based on, you might be best at terraforming. You might be best in terms of going back into maybe LA and making some key contacts and redefining the vision in terms of what people are going to be feeding on cinemagraphically. Mm-hmm. And so, I have people who are working with major foundations. I have people who are working within Hollywood and LA. I have people in major, I gotta be careful here, PR areas and banking and, you know, all sorts of things where they are doing things new and differently and applying their skills. And they're not just in the United States, because there's a lot of things going on in other countries that are making a difference in terms of, you know, the awakened group down there.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you yourself, okay, going through any kind of change, any kind of dilemmas as a result of what's been going on? Because we talked to you a year ago, and I can look at you and see that you've gone through some changes, okay?
I'm getting older, David.
No. I mean, I think that at least in appearance-wise, it looks very positive. And so I'm curious, and I'm sure that people would like to know, how are you affected by this change?
On a personal level, I'll be happy to share. My diet has changed significantly in terms of what I am able to digest and able to eat. Sleep patterns have changed. My strength and stamina has changed. It's almost as if it was time to get ready, get yourself back in shape again. So there's been on multiple tracks in terms of consciousness, my energy levels, the work that I'm doing. And it's just a microcosm of what's going on with everybody that I know. Even people who aren't on the enlightenment path are facing massive changes. So that brings us into something that we haven't talked about, and that's what's going on in terms of cosmic radiation, energy forces impacting the Earth. We are definitely receiving different streams, and it's been detailed that this was going to happen at this point in time. And it's making
Right,
people
so we're
respond
going
differently.
into the center of, the galactic center as we move towards that. We've got waves of energy coming towards us. And can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to talk about because it's interesting how you're going to talk about it with two different groups. When I talk to a group, it's on the what I call the enlightenment path, the initiate path. We can go right into it and talk about it like that. I got news for you. We're all here for the swing vote. And so our job right now is not as much to work within our own group, but to get those people that are curious and want to know more and willing to look through the door at this greater reality of what's out there and start asking questions and live life differently. And so when we talk about things like we talk about radiation, cosmic influences affecting the earth, we can speak about it one way, but it's going to sound so far out to this other group, they're going to close their ears and be turned off. So when we're talking amongst ourselves, we can address it a certain way, but if we're talking to a group where we want to open up to other people, then we start thinking about, okay, make it in terms that they can understand. The reason I'm bringing this up is I want the audience to understand that these are things that they need to be doing, because so many people have good information, but they can't get it past their own small group, and we have to start spreading out more. So that's what the information has been giving to me is we have to understand how to be powerful and effective communicators. So when we talk about these radiation influences and things impacting the planet, we've got to remind people that it's not just woohoo, out there. It really does happen. We can get skin cancer from an orb that is billions of miles away, that there are radiation belts that surround the Earth. So what makes it so far out to consider that there are different radiation and cosmic influences impacting the planet and impacting us as a human species who's on it right now? So what we're finding is that, as you alluded to, that people are finding life very different. They're feeling different. They're having issues in terms of tiredness. They're having issues in terms of energy. They're having dietary issues, almost as if they feel like they're being transmuted in some way. But we have to really watch in how we explain that and talk about that so that it does make sense to other people, because then they'll just say, oh, you're a woman, you're going through a certain stage of life, or oh, you're a man, you're just tired, you're wearing out, it's aging, etc. It isn't necessarily aging, is it? We think something's going on.
Absolutely
and we think that we're
not.
changing at a cellular level.
Exactly. Now, the DNA is changing. We
Well,
are
wait a
changing
minute, I'm
our
going to interrupt
DNA.
you. We don't know that. That is a New Age assumption, because I have not seen one study of research that's shown any mutational impact whatsoever. But is anybody really looking at it on
Right.
a mass basis?
Exactly.
We don't know. So I'm also really hesitant, because I do have this whole background and this whole medical background of walking both worlds. Is that possible that our DNA is changing? Yes, and I've expected it in our lifetime. But nobody's tracking it. There's no scientific evidence of it. And the whole mythology of this 12-strand DNA is not necessarily applicable to the Earth human. The power of the genetics lies within the codons and the codon sequences and the radiation frequencies that comes out within each allele. An allele is a mixture of the chemical bases that make up your DNA. And so that's where the power lies within, and that's where I believe the changes are. One of the natural ways of mutation, one of the 4 natural ways, is radiation. That's how we get spontaneous genetic mutation. So I do believe, and I know that you've read my writings, that is what's happening now, as I've been told was going to happen. What we do need somebody tracking the human on this planet and seeing are there evolutionary processes going on. But there's no money, there's no research, there's no foundation doing that. At the same time, we do have to be careful when we make these assumptions as we're changing. I think it's important to say, I think we're changing, but until I see the actual genetic evidence of somebody doing a study showing mutational changes, then I'm going to look at it a little differently. On my own personal belief system, yeah, we're changing. I do believe we are.
Okay. Well, you can also see it in your own life. I mean, I have to say, here we are a year later. Bob is, looking healthier than he was a year ago. I don't know, he's got a new lease on life. He's going out, he's going to be speaking. We thought last year it was his last interview. I see changes. I see physical changes in the people around me. I just can't ignore it. And I think that they're feeling the changes. So these are, these are real. I see that in my own body. I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's phenomenal.
They're changing physically, they're changing emotionally. You'll also see a lot of relationships. I've seen more marriages and relationships on the rocks and breaking up than I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. You see it emotionally. And I've also seen a lot of people have life and death situations where a lot of people are all of a sudden, they were tremendously healthy and they're facing cancer. And they're walking through that whole cancer process. And many of them, thank God, are coming through it and clearing it through their own processes, which I think is very empowering.
Right.
So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, so we've gone from the waves of energy coming at the earth, and we've talked about it in a little more practical terms, and you're fairly sophisticated scientifically, so you've also addressed that slightly. But what are we doing as a planet in your estimation? Can you describe the astronomy to people such that they will understand both gamuts? In other words, the people that are watching this that are new to the whole notion, and the people that are sort of old hands, but they have maybe not skewed it in their own mind such in the way that you might. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, stop me if I'm not going the direction that I think you want me to go in.
Okay.
Here. But when you talk about the astrology, one of the impacts that...
Astronomy, not astrology, but astrology would be very interesting as well.
So actually, well, they both come in because, let me talk about astrology for a second.
Sure.
Is that, from what I understand, we've had major changes astrologically with some aspects that haven't been around for a couple of 100 years that tend to color and influence generations of people that grow up under it. Astrology, I think, has an absolute foundation to it. I don't think we necessarily read, oh, this is me, I'm a Gemini today, and I should do what the newspaper says. But as a more complex process, it's been around for thousands of years, and I think there's some foundation to it. Plus, with the extraterrestrial teachings that I've had, they've gotten into it somewhat, saying that at one time, if I remember correctly, they were telling me how the way that the moon impacts the ocean and has that influence on the tides, that the actual planetary influences have an impact on our cellular components within ourselves. I don't remember. I'd have to go look it up and read what I had as notes. But I remember that they were pointing me to that there was a foundation to astrological influences on the human being. So there's those major changes that are coming in that affect generations that could be an impetus for this. As far as astronomy, we have what's called the end of the Kali Yuga. We're coming to the end of a major cycle, and we do tend to forget that we're on a planet hurtling through space that is moving. We just tend to look out the window and see our car parked out there and traffic going by, or look at the four walls and see our immediate surroundings. But we're on a space vehicle, and we're moving as if we were a boat in the ocean. We're moving through space, and as a result of that, we are going through different areas, different zones that have different influences. Just like if we were on that ocean and we were suddenly coming to a region that was characterized by great storm activity, and then we would get through it and go on to another region that may have calmer waters. That's pretty much where we're at right now. And I think we're all feeling that effect. And, it's a little bit of chaos, but, I think chaos can be a good thing, because otherwise you just stay where you're at. And where we have been has not necessarily been that great if you look past. We have tremendous advantages that we haven't had, but at the same time, we're not paying attention to the full picture. And we have to respect the entire cycle of life on this planet and really pay attention to the extinction of species that is going on, the environmental decimation that's taking place, and the human being has to get its act together if they want to continue to be the leading harbinger on this planet of the species kingdom.
Okay, so what do you think the chances are that we're going to avoid nuclear war in the near future?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know.
How about...
I would like to think they're very good. But I honestly don't know.
Okay. And what about the United States, the political system? Do you have high hopes for us in the future here?
She scratches her head. It's very easy to be negative about it. What we're seeing, though, is we don't have the patience anymore for the two-party system. It doesn't work. I mean, we've had the Tories and the Whigs. You know, we've had two parties, either or, polarization, you know, left or right, black or white. I think we're grown beyond the two-party system. I'd like to have just one party if it worked, you know, if they could get something done. I think especially in the United States, the start of America, the Founding Fathers, the American Revolution, it was brilliant. I have the greatest respect for that time. But what it has descended into is really this huge bureaucracy that just doesn't work. I've worked in the private sector and I've spent many years in government. So I know what goes on. And it's just big corporations too. They're just strangled by bureaucracy. When you're in crisis, you don't have time for that.
But the problem's not bureaucracy. The problem is that it's been taken over like a Punch and Judy show, and it's not a real democracy anyway. Because
no, it hasn't been for a long time.
The same group controls both sides, so actually it's a farce. I mean, this isn't a real election anyway. It's not a question of polarization. It's a question of dialectic, isn't it? That they use these apparent opposites to keep people busy in television debates, whereas actually the whole thing is engineered. Well. Our whole
life is engineered. I mean, the human history is so different than it's been given to us. And so what has been happening is always you keep the human distracted and you can do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we need to get the human to understand what really goes on this planet, who they really are, so they can take the power back within themselves and stop behaving like the herd species, the slave race mentality, always accepting mediocrity and not doing what's right. We kill off our best and our brightest all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look throughout history, anyone who stands on the fringe and anybody who's been an innovative leader has usually ended up in the stocks on the chopping block or wasting away in prison, tortured. We don't revere our great ones. We kill them off. Mm-hmm. The human species loves mediocrity. It's time for that to change, I think.
Okay.
I prefer to stay optimistic.
All right. Thank you, Marcia. This has been a lot of fun and actually quite enlightening. I think that people will find it very valuable.
It's been a delight talking to you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where people were and where they have come to in such a short time. What I do as a business consultant is that I work with people around the world, probably in 14 countries at this point, and I give them both hard business skills to get ahead, but also some spiritual, mystical, and esoteric knowledge so that they can reposition themselves to really be a new leader for the tomorrow that we need to have. So I'm basically planting human seeds by giving them the skills they need to walk in dual worlds, to build a different type of future than the one that seems to be being handed off to us. And it's been amazing to see the scope of the people who are intrigued by this and want more, because it's not just the New Age realm and esoteric people. There is an entire subgroup of people waking up, making the people who are already aware of these types of things, their demographic group thus is becoming enhanced, because it's like you have that middle swing vote. Mm-hmm. Well, the middle swing vote is making a difference and making a decision, and they're delving very heavily into wanting to know all about this greater reality, this great unknown that's out there. What does it mean? So how many people at this point have had an esoteric experience like, I think I saw a ghost or I saw something in the sky, and they want to know more about it. They want to know more about life's great questions as to why we're here, what does my life mean and have meaning. So we delve into the soul aspects, but then we go into stage 2 and reposition them. So, okay, so you have all this information. Now what are you going to do about it to make a difference? Because that's why we are all here today at this time, is to make a difference, to help to turn a strategic corner on this planet. And they really embrace that and are taking it very seriously. And they're moving so fast in terms of their knowledge and awareness that some of these people are just blowing my mind. You know, between a week of I'm curious, and then they call back the next week and they have a subsequent appointment, and I've been out of my body. I've had this experience. I think there was an extraterrestrial here or something.
Really?
And they need answers. So
Wow.
where do you go for answers? I mean, it's not like you can really go to Wikipedia all the time to find it, or call a friend or something. So
Well, I could recommend they go to Camelot for one thing.
excellent. Yes, we will do that.
But that's great. Well, so you're working with executives at companies, is this right?
I'm working with executives that come knowledge I have hands-on that really save them a lot of time and money in terms of when they're really trying to get repositioned as to what am I going to do here with this business? Real information, not just motivational coaching. Not denigrating motivational coaching, because there is part of that in there.
Right.
Of keeping people focused, and it's an important part. But really tangible, technical skills and inside knowledge that you don't get unless you've been inside an industry. And I've worked across a span of industries that I can help them get positioned. But really, they're mostly hungry for, they like that, but the esoteric is...
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. So, but in terms of hands-on, in a sense, I mean, you're a contactee.
Yes.
You know, you're also, I don't know how you want to term it, but you're intuitive, psychic.
Yeah.
So you must give them entree into certain worlds that maybe they're already being in touch with. I mean,
Right.
are the people coming to you people that have a background already in, having anomalous experiences in their life, possibly even abduction experiences, whatever, contact experiences, however you want to call it? Or are they people that are just, the blank slate coming to you saying, I know nothing, enlighten
Yes,
me?
yes, and yes. It's amazing.
Really?
I tend to say companies working with just lay people, housewives. I've got clients that range
my.
from 16 to 92 and everything in between.
Well, how do they find out about you?
I just find it amazing. They just find me. I have never advertised or marketed, and you'll often hear me say that Google and God are my marketing directors. They just find me. It's like when the London Sunday Times found me, and I go, how on earth did you ever find me?
That's right.
And they said, found you on the internet. I just did a
So
search.
would you call yourself like a personal coach?
No, absolutely not. The reason why is that my executive background and my academic credentials are pretty substantial.
Right.
And so, it may be the ego, but I worked hard for them, and I like to take credit for them. So I have a tremendous amount of knowledge. I'm not just coaching people.
Right.
I'm giving them hands-on experience that you only get when you've really been in certain positions at the top of an organization.
Okay.
And, I've had the professional training, but I mean, my God, I have an MBA, but I think so does George Bush. So, I mean, anybody can get an MBA.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
one begins
Can we
to
edit
wonder.
that out? But, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of But instead of being terrified, we've got to learn to let go of the things that may not have mattered so much when we thought they did, and get ready for tremendous new opportunity to build things the way that they should be built, to allow us to live in a society that will benefit us in a new way.
I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and we're here with Marcia Schafer, and she's going to be telling us a little bit more about the future, possibly. She's written a wonderful book, and she can talk about that and tell us what's been going on for the past year.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. What's been really intriguing in the past year is to see the progression of